Dr. Donna Kashani, welcome all of you to Primetime, our Primetime Power Panel here. Okay, can an old dog learn new tricks? And I'm not talking sexual harassment tricks. Do you think it's possible, folks?
Well, absolutely. You know, one catastrophic event can change your life. If you get cancer, if something bad happens to your kids, if you lose your career that you spent your whole life building, that's a wake-up call. Can this man look at himself and try to understand what the heck happened? Absolutely, absolutely. And everybody, this should be a dialogue not about pervs, but this should be a dialogue about sexuality. Our society has many sexual issues, and we need to look at them. Look at all the people in power who've had sexual issues. Clinton,
it's a power thing, don't you think?
Go on, Mark.
Well, it's not a sexual thing. It's a power thing.
It's a power thing.
It's about intimidating women. That's what it's about. It's about hostility, anger, and
Mark,
intimidation.
You don't know that it was about power, because you haven't examined him, right?
He said it himself. It's about intimidation. That came out in his own statement.
He did. He did say that.
I think going along with what you were saying a little bit earlier, there is, in A, they talk about what's your rock bottom, and I think in his case, or in any of these cases, you have to look at what is this individual's emotional rock bottom, and then what is their level of interest to do something, some kind of remediation for it, and what is their capacity for change. So that's going to depend on the individual.
And go on, Daniel, what are you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, and if anything, as Dr. Levac was saying, if anything's going to motivate a person has to be highly motivated to change. And from a personality perspective, I mean, Dr. Levac's a personality expert, he could speak to this more, but as a personality issue, can he change? He has a long-standing pattern here. And we have to look back and see, well, where did it come from? Is he kind of a nerd that never really had much attention, and he doesn't really know how to do relationships well, and then he has this other part of him that's an executor and it has leadership skills, and it's kind of all jumbled together, and he needs to straighten that out and figure out.
Is he depressed?
Yeah.
Does it?
Wait a minute. This is a guy who's just engaged in a lot of boorish activity.
Thank you.
That offensive behavior directed primarily at women.
Well, that's not true.
But actually, I hear he's a jerk.
And women.
I hear
Right?
he's a jerk to men and women.
Right.
Primarily women.
Whereas if he's not sexually harassing them, he's verbally abusing them.
But we have seen people in marriage therapy, for example, where the male is depressed and begins to act in inappropriate boorish ways. We've seen it with a brain tumor where you lose your judgment.
Right. I think we have to
this guy doesn't have a brain tumor.
Mark,
How do you know that?
I think we have to be very careful, especially as clinicians, when we look at this, because people we rush to judgment. We all have visceral responses to this, right? No one wants their daughter or their wife to be treated this way. It's inappropriate. He's admitted that. But we also want to look, the question is, can they change? That's a different question, whether then is this right or wrong? They're two very different questions.
Right.
But where does psychiatry and psychology come into this? He's behaving badly, and
he has been for almost 70 years.
He just doesn't get it. I mean, for people who've lived in San Diego for a long time and know Mr. Benjamin and his etiquette classes, this guy probably never took those classes.
That's for sure.
I think what you're speaking to is that larger problem with people in positions of power where they let that narcissism get to them.
Absolutely.
And they believe that they're kind of above and beyond reproach, whether they're professional athletes or they are positioned in positions of politics. You know, it's that I'm beyond any kind of redirection and I can get away with it, and you're gonna like it.
I think you're on something right here, because I've always felt that, and we come across people who act like that, who act out on that.
That's right, but you don't know what's underneath. When we give people a personality test, someone who looks like a narcissist, when you do a personality test, they're actually depressed or they're actually incredibly insecure. I'm not saying his behavior was good. I'm just saying that we should have a dialogue now about how we behave, sexuality, power, what are the boundary issues at work, and how do we behave, rather than just putting him down.
Well, he's the bad guy. He's the perpetrator here. I mean,
right.
And he's the one that needs to own up and what you were saying. My wife said it 32 years ago. When you start believing your own BS, that's when you get into trouble. and I think he's done that very, very well.
Right. So again, we're not. The question wasn't what should we do? Should he stay in office? That wasn't the question. The question was that we were asked was, can therapy work? Can people change? And the research shows that in terms of actual sexual criminals that are incarcerated, the actual punishment of incarceration, the recidivism rate is very low. And then when you give them treatment, therapy, the recidivism rate is even lower. So people can, I believe, change if they're highly motivated and they've had a wake-up call, and this certainly has to be a wake-up call for him.
I had a narcissist in my practice once finally admit to me that people told me how great I was for so long that I actually believed them.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah, but again, it's not going to happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's not likely going to happen in 2 years.
Right.
This is a long process.
But how
for this
do
guy.
what do we need to happen in 2 weeks? Mark, I saw you
Well,
sent
he's
that
the
in the paper.
mayor of San Diego. We need a guy who can lead our city.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I think people need to understand that if you go away for 2 weeks of intensive work, you might not change the whole structure of your personality, but you may begin to behave differently. Just like alcoholics never are cured, obese people never stop fighting it, right? It's getting you alerted to what you need to work
Okay,
on.
what you guys need to know real quick is that the city attorney filed, he deposed Filner, and coincidentally, Filner says, well, I'm not going to be around, I'm going to get rehabilitated. So is this just an excuse to not get disposed? Deposed. You know, I don't know.
Disposed.
I can't. I'm sorry, Freudian slap. I'm like, you know where I stand.
See, it is a sexual issue.
Right, and I'm triggered by it because I've been, sexually harassed in my past, climbing up the ladder, and it's horrible to do that to women. And I have 4 daughters, and it better darn well not happen to them.
Right.
This behavior needs to stop.
Why didn't you? I mean, I'm not. I understand it's difficult, but what should women do? What are you telling women now that they should do if they're being sexually
I'm going
harassed?
to tell you that after the break. We'll be right back.